This would have been the 100th birthday of my grandfather, Alexander McCurdy, and the Westminster Choir College, where he taught for many years, is having a day-long celebration. He was a one-of-a-kind in many ways.
And we think that the only composer at the present moment might be Messiaen, and we just mess with him all the time, and it's just terrible. Or we might think that Sowerby's the only thing, and that after all, there's still 3 B's, you know, after Sowerby.
Even now, 22 or 3 years after he died, and 40 years after he retired from Westminster and Curtis, when I Google him, there are hundreds and hundreds of websites of his students.
His legacy was a teacher that was recognized by his peers as peerless.
I remember my grandfather most after he retired to Maine. We would go up when I was a teenager often. Invariably, shortly after we'd get there, he'd say to me, "Get out your cello." We would play and play all afternoon. It's very interesting at this point to go back and talk to his students. I'm reminded about how intense he was.
Oh, he was, no, tough.
What kind of things would he say to you?
Tough doesn't touch it.
No?
Yeah. I think the most famous statement to be repeated by many, many students over a long period of years was, "Well, I certainly hope you know the notes of this piece, or you'll find yourself out on Locust Street."
Well, he could call you all sorts of names that you probably wouldn't be able to call a student in this day and age without perhaps incurring a lawsuit. But he was actually very kind. He understood human frailty. He understood that perfection is something that is very difficult to achieve and even harder to sustain. And he was imperfect himself in his playing, and nevertheless, he was encouraging to produce the very finest product that we could manage.
He always tried to find what that person was made of, and just how to bring out the best in them. And he was incredibly successful.
When it would snow, in the time of Dr. McCurdy's teaching at Westminster, it happened always. I never saw it happen any other way, that Dr. McCurdy would drive in the snow from Philadelphia and be in Princeton for his 8 o'clock lesson. Sometimes then the school would be closed for a snow day at 9 o'clock. And this happened repeatedly. Nothing kept this man from coming to teach his students.
But after I first played my very first student recital in Curtis Hall, everybody stood up and I was getting an ovation, and they were hooting and hollering and screaming, and so my head was so huge going back for that second bow that I wasn't quite sure I could fit through the French doors to get back to the stage. And he gave me a hug and then looked me square in the eye and said, "Well done, but if they only knew what you don't know."
It's very difficult to quote Dr. McCurdy without getting a voice like this.
They couldn't discuss their teacher. They could only imitate him. Did Dr. McCurdy sign you up for a lesson Oh, yes, he most certainly did. He signed me up.
"Well, Mr. Weaver, aren't you just a boob? Aren't you just a dunce?" He said, "Don't you think you should just go back to Baltimore?"
He used to love to talk about West Virginia, my home state, which he would constantly say, "Mr. Litton, did you ever think any good could ever come out of West Virginia?"
You get the nuances. You're musicians. Come on, sing it like you want to. Sit up. You look like you're half dead here. How lovely. With me. 1, 2. Come on. Now, come on, will you? Come on. Again. Oh. Now, take it from me, will you? Take it from me. Just take it right away.
From the first time I ever heard him play the organ, there was an excitement there that I hadn't heard from any organist ever before.
His playing was the way he was. It was energetic. It was rhythmic.
He played the opening recital on the new organ at the Academy of Music in Philadelphia. And the place was jammed, and all of the Curtis students were there, all of the Westminster students, and all of the faculties. Rudolf Serkin was there, you know, and everyone. And he came on stage, and the first thing he did, he played the national anthem, which was electrifying the way he did it. And then from then on, he played one of the finest recitals I've ever heard, totally from memory.
My grandfather was born in Eureka, California in 1905. His mother, who apparently wasn't quite as stern as she appears in this picture, helped him practice every day. When he was 10 or 11, they went to San Francisco, and he got his first job playing the organ in a silent movie theater. In the 1920s, he came to Philadelphia to study at the newly opened Curtis Institute of Music. After graduating in the first class in 1934, he joined the faculty. In 1932, he met and married my grandmother, Flora Greenwood, who was a harpist in the Philadelphia Orchestra. For years, they went on annual concert tours together.
It was at the end of my first year at Westminster, I found that my voice was one of the worst on the campus. In fact, my voice teacher told me I was at the bottom of the barrel vocally and I should take up something else. I played in chapel some trumpet obligatos for the baccalaureate service. Well, Dr. McCurdy was at the organ. So after the rehearsal was over, he came over to me and he says, "Roger, you need to be at the Curtis Institute." He says, "I hire students out of there every year to play trumpet at my church on Easter, and they're not any better than you are right now." It took somebody like that to give me confidence to even audition for Curtis. This is my 31st year at the Philadelphia Orchestra, but it was through Dr. McCurdy that I even thought I had a potential.
Here is organist Michael Stairs with guest conductor Eric Leinsdorf and the Philadelphia Orchestra.
He really didn't care if we were going to be organists or conductors or what we were going to be, but he wanted us, number one, to be great musicians, make wonderful, exciting music, but he wanted us to be honorable people and to be caring about people in our charge. When I'm playing pieces that I studied with him, and of course in 7 years I studied a lot, but I still hear his voice over my shoulder.
I still advise the Episcopal Academy in Philadelphia. They have a motto, esse quam videri, to be and not to seem to be. Think that over a little bit. A lot of us have well, everybody has a kind of a sham, don't you think? How wonderful it is if you can kind of put that off and be what you really are.